My dad came here, graduated in 1941, and it changed his life. It made him, as he would always say, into the man that he was, and he wanted that for his sons.
My dad went here, my dad's dad went here, and my dad's dad's dad went here. So we have a lot of family history at the school.
When I come to Loyola, I'm happy that I'm here.
But if you walk around this campus, you're going to feel it, you're going to see it. It's compassion, it's care, it's all the things that I would define love as.
The single greatest thing about Loyola is a community. It's an education that goes beyond the 4 years.
I would say now, some of my dearest friends that I've had, this is 40 years ago that I was here. I have maintained those friendships for years, and I thank God that I had the experience of working at Loyola High School.
And that's something hard to put words to, but it's family.
It changed my concept of myself, my concept of what I wanted to do in the world, of what my whole views of what humanity is and what the world is.
It's nice to be at a place that's got big shoulders, that's got that runs with the fastest. So, you know, you're not trotting along when you come here. You better suit up and get the right horse. So.
The story of Loyola High School is a remarkable story of transformation. The transformation of students, campuses, and the city of Los Angeles. It's also the story of an institution sustaining itself with enduring values. To understand this story, we have to start at the beginning.
Los Angeles was a Wild West town. It was a cattle town. In the early 1850s, had a very high homicide rate. By the mid-1860s, however, you begin to see signs of civility. You're beginning to see some business buildings built, etc. But it's still a Wild West type of city.
The Vincentian Order had an early presence in Los Angeles. Bishop Thaddeus Amat recruited 3 of his Vincentian brothers and in 1865 opened a school at the Lugo Adobe. The school quickly established itself and in March of 1868 moved to a new, larger campus on 6th Street between Hill and Broadway. The school, known as St. Vincent's College, was really a secondary school, essentially a high school. Over the next 20 years, it mirrored the growth of Los Angeles.
St. Vincent's goes along, it develops very, very carefully, but in a cautious way. But you get a major institutional growth under the presidency of Father Aloysius Meyer.
Father Meyer built a new school at Washington and Grand and relocated in 1887. The railroad linked Los Angeles to the rest of the country, and by 1900, the population grew to 100,000. During the first decade of the 1900s, the Vincentians began thinking about leaving St. Vincent's and returning to their mission to educate seminarians and work with the poor.
The Jesuits had been looking to Southern California for some time. The new bishop of Los Angeles, Bishop Conady, felt that Southern California needed a university.
Bishop Thomas Conady reached out to the Jesuits to assume the charter for St. Vincent's College, and as negotiations progressed, the Jesuits started Los Angeles College in 1911 with just over 100 students. They located the school at Garvanza Highland Park between Pasadena and Los Angeles, and in 1915, the Jesuits formally acquired the charter for St. Vincent's.
St. Ignatius of Loyola, when he founded the Jesuits, founded us based upon his experience of the spiritual exercises, which is a radical experience of God and God's unconditional love that really does transform you, brings out the best in you, and orients your life forward.
We want to educate the whole person. We have this phrase, cura personalis, the personal care for each of our students. We're concerned not just about the academic progress of our students. We want to see them grow socially, emotionally, religiously, as well as academically.
They had those years there in Garvanza Highlands Park. They did the best they could with that property, and it was, in many ways, a happy school, a very happy high school, etc. But it was remote. The students had to commute long distances, and it was just temporary buildings, and ultimately a very difficult time.
Father Frederick Rupert secured property from the Rosedale Cemetery on Venice Boulevard in 1917. Recitation Hall, now known as Loyola Hall, was built in 1918, and Los Angeles College relocated and became Loyola College of Los Angeles. In the 20s, the school expanded the campus and added Rupert Hall. The college division moved to the Delray Mesa in 1928 and eventually became Loyola Marymount University. And in 1930, California issued a new charter replacing the original St. Vincent's charter, legally recognizing Loyola High School. The stock market crash of 1929 led to significant challenges for Loyola in their effort to keep the school open throughout the 30s.
The Depression was terrible. At one point, the rector-president writes to the provincial in California saying, we've got something like $300 in the bank.
The Jesuits in those days had to go out to the parishes on the weekend so they could hear confessions all day Saturday and say masses all day Sunday, just to get $5 to come back and bring so the community could have some support.
The 1940s brought dramatic change to both Los Angeles and Loyola High School. As World War II approached, the school provided a stable refuge as students faced an uncertain and dangerous future.
The war years are prosperous years for Loyola High School. Despite the fact that young men who, say, for instance, were seniors or even freshmen in high school in 1941 could be on the front lines of the Battle of the Bulge by 44.
And everything was geared to the war effort, you know, and that's what you're made to keep in mind all the time. Somebody would always give a report on how many troop transports we'd sunk that week. And we figured we sank the entire Japanese Navy at least 6 or 7 times. I think Loyola gave me a lot of confidence. I felt that there wasn't anything that I couldn't accomplish if I put my mind to it.
What Loyola has done for me is it's pushed me to be uncomfortable and to realize that being uncomfortable is something that you should take advantage of whenever you can, because that's when you find out who you really are.
I think Loyola really did a lot to help me believe in myself, to recognize that I could accomplish things on my own, that nobody does it alone.
I figured out that I'm not just this one little kid trying to fight for a position. I'm like part of a team that's going to help me get through life.
During the post-war economic boom of the 1950s, Los Angeles became a predominant American city, and Loyola enjoyed a decade of stability as it continued to transform lives.
In the 50s, Los Angeles was very different. First of all, the smog problem was just enormous. I remember sitting in the classroom on the first floor on Venice Boulevard there with tears coming down my cheeks and a sore throat. We had loads of scholastics in those days, and they were wonderful guys. God help you if you criticized one of the Jesuits. I did that once, and the next thing I knew, I was up against the locker with a Jesuit's elbow under my chin. And he said, if you ever say anything about my friend, Mr. So-and-so again, I'll knock your head off. I said, gosh, these guys really stick up for each other.
The 1960s began with stability and continuity from the 50s, but the rise of the baby boom generation ushered in a clash of cultures. Kennedy was assassinated, and the Vietnam War and protests against it created a time of turmoil and transition.
Well, when I went to school here in the 60s, it was a simpler time than it is nowadays, although at the time you didn't think so. A smaller campus, obviously. Many more priests, misters.
The Jesuits that I had, first of all, they were all very bright. They all knew what they were doing in the classroom. But also, they were a little bit crazy, but they had a sense of compassion that drew me in.
There were people going off to Vietnam and having those kind of sit-ins and protest songs and a lot of differences of opinions on which way we were going in our country. And some of our kids, you know, they got behind the movement, and it was, you know, they were more like, you know, peace and love, and which is great.
The 70s was a decade of unrest and change, with pressure to move the school. New president, Father Patrick Cahalan, resisted, thus starting a remarkable decade of campus restoration and revitalization.
An alumnus said, you got to move that school. It's in a bad neighborhood. And I said, there's no way we're going to move that school. Just look at the map. We're staying right there.
The best kept secret of Loyola, it's no secret, is location, location, location. Because we can draw on so many wonderful, different neighborhoods with different cultures, different backgrounds, and bring talented young men to this school where everyone receives a great education and they get to know one another and they become lifelong friends.
This is the irony. Despite all these changes, the 70s is a period of extraordinary fundraising, major buildings going up.
So there's a lot of things going on: endowment, salaries, benefits, development of the school.
I hope to make the academics so exemplary that it would be a drawing card into this unique location we had on Venice Boulevard, while Pat was working on developing the plant to such an extent that wherever you were in Los Angeles, you would say, this is a school that I want my son to attend.
During the 80s and 90s, the number of Jesuit faculty decreased, but Jesuit values were effectively transferred to a growing number of both men and women lay teachers. Under the leadership of Fathers Bennett and Walsh, community service became mandatory, and facilities and curriculum began to reflect an emphasis on science and math.
The fact that you're doing good work, that you're educating very promising young men from all over the Los Angeles region, and giving them an education that is going to change some of their lives, not just a little bit, but some remarkably it'll change their lives.
Kairos is meant to be an experience of love. It's a mini experience of the 4 weeks of the spiritual exercises. One has to understand oneself as unconditionally loved to see the way forward into what am I called to do.
So Kairos is basically this intense 4-day retreat. You examine what you have, and I think a lot of the guys come back feeling much more thankful.
On Kairos, I learned a lot about myself, my spirituality, my relationships with others, and mistakes I've made in the past and what I can do to fix them.
We want them, our students, both when they enter and when they leave, to understand that God gave them tremendous talents and abilities, but they're only best used when they're in service for others.
Man for Others, I thought, when I first came here to Loyola, was just a slogan. But when I first really experienced community service here at Loyola, it really showed me what that truly meant. It wasn't just a slogan anymore. It was something that I took to heart and something that I will take to heart for the rest of my life.
Loyola certainly opened up my worldview. But coming to Loyola, it's not just one community, it's so many communities combined together.
It made me understand how you need to work with others to improve and not just think of yourself.
I definitely feel like the friends I've made here will be the friends that I'll have for the rest of my life, because we all have the same goal in mind, to be the best men we can be.
Yeah, we are definitely a family. We have each other's back 100% all the time, which is really nice to know that even if I feel alone or lost at any point in my life, that Loyola is going to be a fallback.
The 21st century finds Loyola navigating an ever more complex world, yet remaining true to its Ignatian values.
I think I want to be sensitive to the traditions that come from history, but I also feel challenged to maintain the level of excellence that we historically have. I also want us to bridge into that 21st century and move into skills and areas that didn't exist 5 and 10 years ago, let alone 50 or 150 years ago.
It's more than just the buildings, it's what's happening in those buildings. It's a school that's surrounded by a great deal of love. Love for knowledge, love for others, love for service, love for excellence. And I think those are very, very strong foundational pieces that can't be broken.
I believe that Loyola has a very special ability to make you who you're going to be for the rest of your life in a very good way.
Loyola cares for its students, for its parents, for its teachers, for its administrators. They care.
It was great for my husband, it was great for my son, it'll be perfect for my grandson.
Kids that I know from my old school or from my neighborhood that know about Loyola and already say they want to go to Loyola is astounding.
Oh, I love it. Absolutely love it. It's a great place. It's changed me as a person, made me a better person. I'm becoming a man.
We open our doors every day in order to give everyone who's part of this great institution the life-changing, transformative experience of God's unconditional love that is the fruits of the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius. And we do it in education by giving these kids the most rigorous education possible so they can understand who they are, what their gifts and talents are, and then how to use those gifts and talents not only for themselves, but for the world around them, and really turn their focus outward and say, all that I have, I need to give back to the world, to give glory to God.
One of the things that always impressed me and made me really proud to be a part of this place was annually we have this awards ceremony in Xavier Hall. Invariably, as I announce the awards, those students would cheer for their friends. That was always very touching. There was no seeming jealousy, resentment. They were all for the other guy. And that made me feel real good.
One student at a time, Loyola has been transforming the lives of young men, inspiring them to do their best and challenging them to look outside themselves and to serve others. As Loyola reflects on its past and embraces its present, its history of transforming lives ensures its future.
Loyola really fostered who I am today, and I mean, I'm going to be thanking Loyola for it for the rest of my life.